So I'm Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Yeah, I recognize a lot of people in here. There's some new faces, which is awesome. And this is why I always tell people I love you. I love you all very much, and because you've helped me whether you know it or not. And if you haven't, you will, because it's all part of the process. It's what happens. We help each other. So before I get started, I just got a call about an hour ago that an old friend passed away, and it didn't surprise me. I mean, he was homeless. He was on the streets. He was very far from the rooms. He was at one point a very strong man of the book, a book thumper. He was an amazing sponsor and teacher to many. And if he would have passed away 10 years ago, there'd be 150 people at his service, and he'll be lucky he has 5 there. I mean, because he walked away from the most beautiful thing you could imagine. And this man was devoured by this disease that no medical plan can work except for the steps. And he was probably the first person when I came back this time in 2000, after numerous times in and out, that got me into the book. And then we were really good friends, and he came back after a relapse, and I sponsored him. And I will explain to you later during the circle and triangle thing what happened to him, because it ties into it perfectly. And he's with God now, but he should be here with God, right? And showing people how he got to God. And so I'm dedicating the meeting to him today. So I'm going to talk about the title page. So, but as Kim said, he asked me to do traditions, and I said, I love talking steps, and the traditions, I don't do them justice as much as I should. I guess I probably could do them, but we talked it over, and this is what we came up with. And so I'm going to share the screen. And give me 1 second. There we go. So the story, how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. This statement is the first promise in the big book of many promises. And when I first read it, I didn't believe it, because you can't be recovered. That's what, and that's why I believed. And sadly, many in the fellowship believe the same thing. And this is the first written thing in our book, right? It's the title page. So I'm going to break down this statement and start off with the story. So any story it's a narrative and has a message within it. And perhaps it can be about people, it can be about a course of events, it can be fact or fiction. But the word story comes from a Latin word called historia, which means history or just story. So it's, so let's look at the word history. It's a chronicle of events that contain detailed information. And when you describe something as a history, what we're implying is it has an intriguing past, something that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Information. This book has a history of helping thousands of men and women. So this story shows how to identify the problem, how to apply the solution, and how to achieve ongoing sobriety. If the word story doesn't connect to you, change the word story to directions. The direction is how many thousands of men and women recover from alcoholism. That's what this book is saying. And when you put something together, it's usually best to follow, it's a good idea to follow directions, period. Each instruction. And so that it properly works the same way the other people did it. And these are clear cut in here. So let's look at the next part. The story how. So how means is a way or a means. So it's like how it's done, or to us, how it works. How is trust God, clean house, work others, selfless service, passing on to those who are ready. how also is how we do this process is steps 4 through 9. But that's the how. So many thousands of men and women. The first edition, of course, said hundreds of men have recovered. Of course, for some reason back then, men met women as well. Especially in this day and age, it's a lot dated. But if you this is a deep aspect. Actually, I would love to come back to this group sometime if I was allowed and explain how we went from 100 to thousands and the first 40 members and the hundreds and all that. But that's a whole other deal. I love this type of stuff. So the 100 men and women are the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the fellowship in those days is drastically different than today. So the hundreds of men and women that wrote this, put this book together, had a fellowship much different than today. Drastically different, because they knew they needed more than fellowship. We're going to go to page 17 real quick, and it's going to explain that to you in a little bit better than I can. And it says, the feeling having shared in a common peril, that's a common problem, is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself never holds together, as we are now joined. So we have the exact same common problem, illness of the body and mind. The body, of course, is the phenomenal craving. When we put alcohol in our body, we crave more, period. That's the physical reaction. That's what we call an allergy. And then we have the mind part, which is the reoccurring, persistent idea of drinking. It doesn't respond to reason. It leads me to drink against my will. We call that obsession of the mind. And basically, I have no defense against the first drink because the obsession. I have no defense against the second drink because the allergy, or the third drink, or the fifth drink, or the 10th drink because the allergy. That's why we're powerless. It is that common problem that brings us together, that unites us, and we call that fellowship. And that's what the first 100 shared. But they knew that fellowship on its own wasn't enough. There was something bigger, something that connected them. In the next paragraph down, the tremendous fact is for each and every one of us, we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out which we could absolutely agree upon, in which we can join in brotherly harmonious action. The reason I'm pointing all this out is this is what the first 100 men and women they mention in this book discovered, a common solution, which is steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It is the common solution that connects them, connects us. It is the backbone. This book is their story. So today our fellowship is more focused on the common problem and staying sober and ways to stay sober than the common solution. So it's up to people like us in here to bring it. So I'm going to look at the next part. Controversial part. Have recovered from alcoholism. So what's alcoholism first? We'll go a little backwards on it. Alcoholism is what I just explained, the allergy, the obsession. It's as simple as that. It says, have recovered from alcoholism. Recovered, is that possible? People tell us you cannot be recovered. It's recovering, and this is the title page. Yet people doubt it's true. It's a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The book's named, the fellowship's named after the meeting. They think it means cured, and cured would mean the allergy's gone as well as the obsession. Recovered is when the obsession has been removed. It tells us that on page 84 or 85 of the book, and the 10-step promises. Somewhere around there, the problem gets removed, obsession. And the reason they say recovered from a seamless, hopeless state of mind and body is because since the obsession is removed, it's no longer feeding the allergy, so the allergy is dormant. It's, and steps 4 through 9 produce a spiritual awakening that expel the obsession to drink, and we become recovered 10, 11, 12 to maintain that. Does it say the story of men, about 1,000 men, one recovering from alcoholism? No, it says recovered, which means restored to health. Recover and recovered are the same thing, restored to health. Recovering is a state of mind during the process of recovering. If you're new and you're on step 4 or 5 or making amends, you're still in the process of recovering. I'll give you an example. I had surgery years ago, complete reconstructive back surgery. It was terrible. I was in the hospital for 18 days and 6 months of intense physical therapy. During the physical therapy process, I was recovering. I did not want to go back and experience that again. I was recovered from the surgery so I could try to have a normal life again. Recovering is in the book twice. Recovers in the book 17 times, recovered 24 times, meaning wellness is mentioned 41 times. I was only recovering a very short time. In the second edition, they added what's called the circle and the triangle. And it was in the first edition, it had like a flower on there, you can look it up. But you know, what had happened is the circle and the triangle is very ancient symbolism, right? And we see it everywhere. The Celtic knot is very similar to this. It's infinite, it keeps going, there's no end to it. But there's other forms we see it here. We see this somewhere everywhere. See it on, well, the American dollar bill. We see it there. This is another medical thing. And then numerous signs of it. But then we see it in some weird places, like, you know, this is a observation well where you open the well up and you see how deep the water goes. Well, it's also the sign on the sewer line. Interesting. But more commonly, we see it on the bathroom door in some places. But the truth is, it's ancient symbolism. So let's look at the circle and triangle come into one. So the thing is, first, let's look at the circle. And the circle is one of the oldest geometric symbols, and it commonly represents many things: protection, unity, wholeness. Now, wholeness also means completeness and perfection. And people will argue whether you can have spiritual perfection because there's progress. Well, you want progress, but you'll experience it. If you're whole, that's one of our goals. But this is my favorite one, is the infinity or ongoing. You look at this, it's ongoing. It keeps going. There's no end to it. It does not have a beginning or an end. It does not have sides or corners. So in spirituality, the circle represents a supernatural motion that keeps things moving continuously, right? And Zen Buddhism, the circle refers to enlightenment and perfection. And of course, you know, Christianity has the halos, and that halo is a symbol of wholeness. It represents a circle of light around the head of a saint or holy person. But it goes on and on. I can go on and on about different ones. And then the next one is the triangle. And they're also one of the oldest geometric symbols commonly represent. And it represents many things: mind, body, spirit. Interesting. Mind, body, or probably, yeah, mind, body, spirit. We'll get back to that. It also represents past, present, and future. But most of all, it represents strength. This is one of the coolest ones there is on here. So why? Because of foundation. A foundation is, you know, we built on a foundation, and the whole building stands on that foundation. A foundation is a base for something. Structural foundations of buildings, is to support something. So in Egypt, we have the pyramids. They are the ultimate sign of strength. They've been standing for thousands and thousands of years and are still standing today. They continue to stand for thousands of more years. Why? Because they're built on a foundation, built on a foundation, built on a foundation, built on a foundation. So that's just the power of the triangle. Every level is a foundation for the level above it, right? Very I think we're very much like that too. we keep building on this foundation. So let's put the circle and triangle together. You know, what it comes out to is mind, body, spirit. The circle means complete or whole. So the story behind this is very simple. Bill Wilson, I believe, I'm guessing it had to be 47 or 48, because if it was anything lower than that, no one would know who we are yet. You know, but he went to Europe, and I believe the first groups that went to Europe were around that time. And what they would do is they would segue people to Europe. You go live in Europe, or wherever around that, you know, in different countries, and we'll pay for you to be there. And they did that, of course, even more when they got millions of members and thousands, because there's no one, it wasn't there. And that's why the book was written, for people like you guys in other countries. And so Bill's walking through a church in England, and he kept seeing in the stained glass window a circle with a triangle. So there's the priest that was giving him the tour, he asked him what that meant, and he said mind, body, and spirit. And Bill went, and everything else, rest of his vacation was like, he drew on a piece of paper like later that day. Everything else on his vacation was just like, that's our symbol. And so the second edition came out, I think it was 52. I don't know if I don't get that wrong, but 52, I think. And also 12 and 12 came out, and they had the first convention. This went up on the wall of the convention, and everybody went crazy. They loved it. And, you know, and what he came up with was happily and usefully whole, you know, because of 3 legacies. And the first legacy, so this is the legacies right here. And I mean, sorry, this is the mind, body, and spirit, wholeness. This is what we came up with. The first one on there, first legacy, is unity. Now, unity, which means, it means to bring something together, to unite, union, like we're doing right now, other than being divided, right? And we know what the divided feels like, right? We know what it feels like. So unity is our fellowship, where people share a common problem, like we mentioned, who give us love and hope together and offer a common solution. And also where we can find people to pass the knowledge on. Then we have service, and so we have, I'm sorry, I messed up. For unity, we have we have 12 traditions. Now, the 12 traditions represent the principles that support the unity of the fellowship at the group level. So they establish the boundaries of our fellowship and the means by which it spiritually lives, maintains, and grows. A lot of people miss out on that. They want to use them as laws, what you can't do at meetings and all this stuff. BS, that's all I gotta say. But they apply to the life of the fellowship, to how we can grow spiritually. They're not laws, they're traditions. And when I think of unity, I think of union with God. One thing I want to bring up about the traditions is you can find them in the first, the forward of the first and second editions mixed in there. And one thing that Bill Wilson recognized why he wrote the traditions was, you get a bunch of alcoholics together who've been unsuccessful at certain points of life. So people were using, all of a sudden they come in and they want to rule a group, and they're using power for, over people. They were running groups with power. There was issues with sex, all sorts of things, crazy stuff going on. They needed traditions. Without these traditions, we wouldn't be here. So the next is service. And if you perform, duties to help someone, you're providing a service. It's your free time for the benefit of another person, right? The coolest thing about service is, whatever you're doing, you don't know the people, or you may not even see them ever, Service gives us the opportunity to apply our primary purpose, to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. Our 12 steps carrying the message is the basic service of the fellowship gives. This is that's our principal aim and the main reason for existence. So for service, we have 12 concepts. Don't ask me to break these down because they're out there. There's also another bunch of 12s too. They've added over the years, but these are the main three. But these can be found on the general service manual. You can look it up online and read them. But there's so much service out there. We have commitments, secretary. There's so much you can do. Do all those. Be a GSR. But there's nothing like sponsoring, and that's the one where we say we're not ready to do yet. If you say you're not ready to do it, you're never going to do it. And that's giving back freely what was given to you. Service, it could be volunteering even at a food pantry too, feeding the homeless, being altruistic. It's selfless. So the bottom of the triangle, you see we have recovery. Recovery refers to the process of healing after an illness or injury, right? It also means to obtain and get something back. Like in American football, we have the fumble recovery. Like a person has a hold of the ball. Whoever has the ball, they got it. For us, recovery is much deeper than a football. It's receiving. It's getting to a higher state of God consciousness so we can overcome the fatal malady of alcoholism and continue to grow spiritually. That's the key. Continue to grow spiritually. It refers to a return to our natural, original state. AA co-founder, I say founder, AA founder Bill Wilson referred to recovery as freedom from alcoholism. In other words, recovery is about transformation. It's about transformation. Recovery is about changing your outlook, your thoughts, your perceptions, so you can become that whole person we talked about earlier. That's what that circle represents. Not just someone who doesn't drink anymore and goes in and out and out and out. We don't want that. What we need for long-term recovery is emotional sobriety. And it's about that will bring us to an area of happiness and freedom. Looking at our emotions to live in productive lives. For recovery, obviously, we have what's called the 12 steps. It's just the foundation. And I guarantee it fills all this up. So while these three are vitally important to have together, all these are one, right? But this fills it up in there. Bill in the 12 and 12 says AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which if practiced as a way of life can expel the obsession drink, enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. So the 12 steps are a path of spiritual progress designed to produce a psychic change. Mental, emotional, spiritual shift. Complete shift in perception. Complete shift in reality. Rearrangement of personality. Let me say that, rearrangement of personality. The alcoholic's, the alcoholic's former center of life, this obsession and their self-will, their misdirected instincts, is replaced with a personal sense of spirituality. In other words, dependence upon God through God consciousness. This deep, radical change in personality is absolutely necessary for long-term recovery. Absolutely necessary. And the 12 steps are the most effective tool ever for long-term recovery in history. Each legacy of these principles is total of 36. They're guiding principles. This circle, okay, I'll leave it there. This one, circle represents wholeness. The circle represents wholeness or oneness. The complete symbol is the perfect union of mind, body, and spirit. So I said I'll explain about what happened with my friend. So when I met him, he was doing the recovery. He was big in the Unity, GSR, and all that, and was sponsoring his ass off. He was all this right here. But what happened was, over time, he got what I call he got a spiritual ego. Meaning, I know everything, my way is the right way. Everyone at the meetings is bad because they don't know anything and all that stuff. Spiritual ego. I call it judgmental attitude. And when he started doing that, he lost the unity. Eventually, he lost the service. He lost the circle. He sponsored, but he lost the other sides of the triangle. He went back out, and he was never able to get it back. He would come to me and say, "Oh, if I do the hour, that's where I found God before, was in that hour after the fifth step. I just need to do it again like that." I go, God doesn't work that way. He just, you know, when you come back and you relapse, you come back, you have to let go of any expectations. That's the way this thing works. God's not going to fill your glass for you. He's not going to say, "Okay, I'm going to give you everything you want." But he lost elements of the triangle. So basically what I'm saying is, we got to do this, most important, but we got to go to meetings, and we got to always do some type of service. That's what it brings together. So the question is, the circle and triangle is no longer AA literature or a part of AA. So what happened? So a little bit of a background. So the circle and triangle, it was in 1955, was adopted at the 20th anniversary convention in St. Louis, and they had a registered trademark. But in the 80s, a problem began, and the circle and triangle began to be used by outside organizations making novelty items, necklaces, shirts, whatever, medallions. In 86, a World Service went out to these entities for using unauthorized manner of the circle and triangle. And of about 170 unauthorized users were contacted, 2 lawsuits were filed, and both were settled in out of court, whatever. But in 1990, what happened was denying of the use of symbol and triangle started to create much controversy. AA members were getting birthday chips without them on there, with a circle and triangle, because they were in the middle of these lawsuits. And members asked why. When they found out why, they were like, "What the heck?" They didn't like the idea of outside groups not using the triangle. Why not? And so what AA did to avoid the controversy in 1993, they got out of the situation. They quietly discontinued the trademark or copyright, trademark, whatever, and protecting circle and triangle, and it phased it out. That's why it's no longer in the 3rd edition. That ended in 1976. It came out. So about 1979 they took it out. No, I'm sorry, 83 they took it out, and 93 they continued. They totally got rid of it. That's why we no longer see it in books and literature, and might see it on service center walls, and we still use it as our identification. One thing I want to point out to you, and then I'm going to close, is you see this sometimes on the chip, and sometimes you see your sobriety right here, 25 years, 24 hours, whatever. But you see the how. The how is very, very, very important. So if you have a big book in front of you, go to page 568 in the back of the book. It's the second page of the spiritual appendix or spiritual part. And I'm going to break down this last page, and I'll show you guys the how. It says most emphatically, that means with considerable importance, high importance. We, it's the first 100, not us, to say any alcoholic that does not leave anyone out. So most emphatically to say any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems, not problems. We don't have just one problem, not just an alcohol or drug problem. We have problems, lots of them. And yet capable of honestly facing his problems and the light of our experience can recover. There's that word again. It doesn't say the light of our experience is recovering. It says can recover. We do recover. And the light of our experience can recover. Look at this. Here's a condition. Provide does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. This is very important right here, and very important with the how. A closed mind cannot get fed, meaning that you're not letting anything in. This is an open-minded program. That's what happened to my friend. His mind quit being open. And that means to consider someone else's opinions other than your own. To not tear people apart. And they're saying be open-minded to all spiritual concepts. A good example of all spiritual concepts is the steps. And there might be elements in there of letting go, like forgiveness, almost like, and amends, and all those things that go with it. And they're saying is don't be a hater of religion. Your way isn't the only way. Your ladder to God is the only ladder to God. And if you have one concept of religion, you're closed-minded. These steps are very difficult if you're closed-minded. Be open-minded. It says he can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. Belligerent is angry denial. We find that no one have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. I love when people say, I'm going to do the spiritual part of the program. Every step is spiritual. And step one might very well be the most spiritual step there is. Go back and look at it. Go back and look at it, because if you have power now and you go back when you were powerless, you realize that's an extremely spiritual step. So here's the how, or some people call it the who. So the willingness, that's the W part. Willingness, honesty, open-mindedness are essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. That's the how. Willingness, open-mindedness. Willingness, honesty, open-mindedness. So willingness means you're ready for something, demonstrated by action. It's all over the steps. When I had guys that didn't want to do their 4 steps, my sponsor had to point out to me they're just not ready. Ready is what willingness is ready. Every step has willingness involved, especially 5, 6, and 7, especially step 6, because you have to be willing to let God remove all these things being objectable. Honesty. The big book calls it rigorous honesty, complete honesty, which is scary. Is that possible? It's possible with the steps. So the best definition of honesty I've ever heard is awareness of where I'm at. That's a self-honesty. Am I powerless over alcohol? Is my life consumed by resentment? Am I blaming others? Do I live in fear? Do I drive people out of my life? Can I run my life on my own, or do I need something greater? Am I willing to let go of my old self? Am I willing to live by these new terms we call the steps? Open-mindedness is to consider someone else's pain other than my own. Can you? Someone else's pain other than your own? Do you constantly judge others are wrong? So essentials means necessary. Keep your mind open and let the process take you. So essentials, necessary. Recovery means restored to health. And indispensable means unavoidable. So what they're saying here is being ready, knowing where you're at, and to consider someone else's opinion other than your own are necessary to be restored to health, necessary for wellness. That is the how. Honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. Honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. Very important. As important as the steps in the triangle. If you don't have this, you're in trouble. If you want to close with this is, my friend won't come back, and I realize that. But there's a meeting over at the fellowship hall in about an hour. It's at the fellowship hall that's in the bad neighborhood. We call it the ghetto, and that's my neck of the woods. I'm going to go over to that fellowship hall where the real alcoholics are, in the bad part of town, because while my friend won't be there, someone will be back today. That's the most important thing you can realize when someone goes out. This disease will break your heart, but your heart can always be filled. That's the most amazing thing. It does not have to stay broken. And the one thing this program has taught me is I need you just as much as they need me. You know, those people at the fellowship hall, I need them just as much as they need me. And, you know, if there's anyone in here that's looking for a sponsor, reach out, talk to me, or talk to anyone else in this room. That there's plenty of capable people in here. So that's enough out of me. Thank you for having me in here today.